Hello! Let's explore the ID proofing enhancements introduced in the Brisbane release for external identity management. Why does this matter? Because onboarding external users securely isn't just a nice-to-have. It's a compliance and risk management necessity. Identity proofing was first introduced in the Amsterdam release with support for ID data web. Now with the Brisbane release, we're expanding that capability to include a new trusted vendor, OneCosmos. This matters because OneCosmos brings advanced verification tools that help reduce identity fraud and support compliance with global standards like KYC, AML, and GDPR. Using official documentation, organizations can securely verify the identities of external users during onboarding. The setup is quick, just a few configuration values like tenant DNS and license key, and you're good to go. The bottom line is that this integration helps businesses onboard faster, stay compliant, and protect against identity-based threats from the start. Let's walk through the 5 simple steps for onboarding an external user with identity proofing in the Brisbane release. The first step is to set up the identity proofing provider. You can now choose from 2 supported vendors, ID Data Web and the newly added OneCosmos. Second step is to create user onboarding workflow. Introduce the new workflow stage called ID proofing into your onboarding process. This reminder is fully configurable and helps reduce drop-offs by nudging users to complete their verification before the link expires. In the third step, you onboard the external user on the Saviynt Identity Cloud platform. You can onboard users via the Create User Request option, whether individually, in bulk, or via API. During this stage, the system will automatically send one reminder during the ID proofing process, which can be configured within the workflow. In the fourth step, you perform identity proofing when onboarding users. The user submits documentation for verification as part of the identity proofing process. In the fifth and the final step, you create an identity for verified identities. Once the verification is successful, the Saviynt Identity Cloud platform creates the user identity, enriched with attributes such as verification status and verification date. To enable identity proofing with OneCosmos, customers need to provide 4 configuration details. These details include tenant DNS, community name, license key, and verification config. Once received from OneCosmos, these values are entered directly into the identity proofing configuration screen within Saviynt. This ensures a smooth onboarding process with minimal setup effort. Saviynt now allows administrators to configure how long an identity verification link remains valid after being issued. Once the link expires, users cannot complete their identity verification using the same link. This feature ensures security and encourages the timely completion of onboarding. To configure this, navigate to Admin, ID Proofing, Settings, Verification Link Expiry Duration. The expiry duration is set in hours. Example 2 hours. With the Brisbane release, Saviynt Identity Cloud admins can now send up to 3 manual reminders for pending ID proofing. The Send ID Proofing Reminder button appears when the request is at the ID proofing workflow stage. This feature is accessible only to users with SAV roles linked to pending approvals. When triggered, the reminder email is instantly sent using the configured template. If no email template is set, the reminder button will not be visible. Let's compare how identity proofing has evolved from Amsterdam to Brisbane. In Amsterdam, only ID Data Web was supported and identity proofing was limited to new users. There was no feature to re-verify or update identities for existing users. With Brisbane, Saviynt now supports both ID Data Web and OneCosmos. Identity proofing is now available for both new and existing users. A major new feature is the Update User ID proofing, enabling re-verification scenarios like role changes or expired verification statuses. As part of the Brisbane release, Saviynt now provides the following new out-of-the-box reminder email templates for identity proofing. These templates simplify configuration and standardize the process for sending identity verification reminders. Let's now look at the demo of Savynt's identity proofing capabilities, introduced earlier with v25.Brisbane and enhanced in the Brisbane release to support OneCosmos as the ID proofing provider. To get started, the first thing we need to do is make sure ID proofing is enabled. We do that by going to Admin Global Config Identity Lifecycle. Here, there's an option called Enable Identity Proofing. We need to check that out. Once ID proofing is enabled, we will move over to the ID proofing configuration screen. Go to Admin Identity Proofing. By default, v25.Brisbane is listed here, but now we will also have OneCosmos available as a new vendor. We will click on the three dots next to the OneCosmos and enter the necessary details. You need to provide the following: tenant, DNS, community name, license, key, verification config, ID, and the document you want to verify. Now you can save these settings. Just a quick note here. This is a cost-incurring feature, so organizations usually configure it to trigger only for specific use cases or user types. Also, under the tab Settings in the ID Proofing section, you can now configure how long the verification link remains valid. This is done using the verification link expiry duration setting. Now that OneCosmos is set up, the next step is to build the workflow. Now we go to the Admin Identity Lifecycle and create a new workflow with an identity proofing block under the workflow. Inside that block, we choose OneCosmos from the drop-down. It'll only appear once we configure it properly. So we also attach the email template, which is provided out of the box, called Saviynt Out-of-the-Box Identity Proofing. Also, in the Brisbane release, we have an option to select the first reminder email template. If a user hasn't completed the verification, the system sends one follow-up email reminder. Once the workflow is saved, we go back to the global config. Now, under the Identity Lifecycle, under Modification, we assign the workflow we just created. Now let's test this out by onboarding a new external user. Go to Create User Request under User Management. To create a user, we will fill in the basics: first name, last name, and email as mandatory fields. These details are used to send the verification link once we click Submit and Save to create a request. So behind the scenes, a provisioning task is triggered and a verification link is emailed to a user. Now, the user will receive that link and go through the identity proofing process. This could include uploading documents, Once the user has completed all the identity verification steps, the ID proofing verification status job from the job control panel gets the verification status from OneCosmos. Now, as you can see here, the job is set to schedule every 2 minutes by default. You can check the verification status from the request history page. And with the Brisbane release, we now have the option to send an ID proofing reminder. Important to note here that a maximum of 3 manual ID proofing attempts to send a reminder are allowed. If everything checks out, the verification status in Saviynt changes from pending to success. Once that happens, the user is automatically onboarding into the system. Let's quickly check in the identity repository whether the user is onboarded or not. And yes, as you can see, the user has been successfully onboarded and the verification status shows success. So that's how easy it is to configure and use identity proofing with OneCosmos in the Brisbane release. Thank you for watching.